This is Frank with another episode of Real Raw Exchange Podcast. And can I get my co-hosts to introduce themselves?
Hey, this is Kyra.
All right.
Hey, this is Matt.
Hey, so we got three people today, which is okay. So the topic for today, on today's episode, is going to be LGBT representation in children's TV and entertainment. Now, of course, when it comes down to that title, we're going to shorten it a little bit, for y'all to be able to understand, kind of more so, okay, getting straight to the point of what we're going to talk about, when it comes down to this podcast episode. So, let me go ahead, share my take on this topic. Out of all the topics in the world to talk about, this is one of the topics that for many years I've kind of shied away from for various reasons. Now I think I have a better understanding of being able to talk about this topic and being as, if I could say, as balanced, but also being as understanding of some of the things that I feel the need to talk about, but then other things to kind of contrast, the things that I feel I need to talk about in reference to this topic. Most, and I'll put it in this perspective, most cisgendered heterosexual males would never even touch a topic like this, especially if, they're doing podcasts or, wanting to, do some type of recording or, be in the media, what may have you. Whereas for me, I think with the balance that I do have in mind, with things that I've read up on, in addition to having people, school me on, certain aspects of it, because obviously I'm not within that community. So at times I do feel like I shouldn't talk about stuff like this. But if I'm going to talk about it, I'm going to share my perspective, but then also, share another side where I do create balance within the conversation. Nevertheless, here's my take on LGBT representation within children's television, entertainment, so on and so forth. My take on it is, it's going to be there anyway, regardless of what I think or feel about. It's going to be there anyway. Why? Because for those particular companies that are creating your various shows, creating your entertainment, what may have you, there's always going to be a push. One of the biggest things that I also understand in the scope of the entertainment industry, especially with it being a market, you have a lot of people that are in higher positions that are a part of that community, so they're going to feel like they need to push forth in having their, version of representation when it comes down to who they are, to be put at the lowest level of children being able to consume whatever products that inevitably ends up getting put out there when it comes down to the media, when it comes down to entertainment, when it comes down to being able to look at a movie, being able to look at a cartoon show, so on and so forth, So for me being that cisgendered heterosexual male, or cisgendered heterosexual black man in the United States of America, I can say, oh, well, yeah, I don't think I want my kids to look at that. However, in my personal opinion, it would be no point in saying that when it's already been pushed and is going to continue to be pushed over the course of years, in entertainment for kids. So I need to have a mindset of being able to give my future children context on what they potentially could be exposed to when a particular cartoon is created, and then all of a sudden they get drawn to that cartoon for various things that they enjoy in that cartoon, television show, or movie. What y'all think?
Yes, teach children that all families are different and different families are okay. That I'm okay with. It's the narrowing it down to specifics that I have a problem with for younger children. For example, there's a cartoon on Nickelodeon, The Loud House, and one of the siblings is a member of the LGBT community. So when you have a 7-year-old who doesn't even have the concept of a relationship yet, and you're introducing that whole new thing to them, there's a problem that you're going to have to explain. I mean, I don't even say it's a problem. It's something additional that you're going to have to figure out and try to find a way so a little 7-year-old mind can wrap around that concept. So it doesn't need to happen as early as it is happening right now, because when you are like kids that watch that show, I want to say are maybe like 6 to 10 maybe, because it's a little kids cartoon, but it's not like Nick Jr. level cartoon. So they talk a lot about different topics, but that specific topic is a lot for a 7 to 8-year-old to kind of wrap their mind around when they aren't even worried about relationships. But I have a problem with cartoons and relationships anyway, because if it's for a 7-year-old, why are we even worried about a love interest at that age? Why is that something that we're focusing on at that age? So it's not just the LGBT adding onto that, it's cis relationships too. We focus on, and look at Disney. All of Disney's major princesses, it's a love relationship. They get married. The focus is on them ending up with somebody at the end of the movie.
Yeah, that's true.
So we're already pushing relationships on kids who don't even have a concept or idea of what it is.
Okay.
I agree. And not only that, I have a lot to say. I'm just trying to fall in, because I don't want what I authentically feel to be miscommunicated. So I'm just trying to figure it all out.
Okay.
I, like Kyra, I don't have a problem with what she doesn't have a problem with either. I totally agree with it starting at a young age. It's just too, for me, it's just too young. I was watching, same kind of thing here. I was watching Beauty and the Beast, right? And I don't know if you've ever seen like the live action one, right? But it's a character. What's his name? Gaston's guy. LeFou.
Yeah.
I cannot say that he is of that community, but if you watch the movie, well, I didn't see where they like publicly said it, so that's why I'm
when it came out, they brought that up that way that people knew, like it was a part of the conversations on the release.
Okay, so then it was there. So that is like, okay, so since it was a part of so then this opens it all up then. So since there was already a conversation had, Disney made the choice to say, hey, we gotta find a happy medium with the LGBT community and this movie, so we're gonna put this character in there. It wasn't over the top, but it was a little, it was for me, if I had taken my child to go see it, I kind of would have felt some type of way. Why? Because in the original, let's go to the original Beauty and the Beast. These kids have probably seen, well, maybe not. Maybe they haven't seen the original because it's another generation. But those of us who remember, like the one before that, like the animated version, there was no, that character was not there, right? That character did not exist. So they put that character in there. And I just feel like they could have done a total different movie where they introduced that. Why did you have to take that? And I mean, I just don't get it. First of all, I don't think it should be in children shows at all. That's my personal opinion. And I honestly don't think I'll ever feel differently about that. And like Kyra said, it is kind of like it introduced, not even, in a homosexual way, or it's introduced heterosexually too. Like there are couples, like just like she said, on Disney, Nickelodeon, these, they're kissing. I I mean, literally, the kissing, it's about relationships. And she's right. If you have a 7, 8-year-old, not only do they have to wrap their mind around the fact that this is happening with two of the same sexes, but if you look inside their household, do they even, what if you have a child that don't see that at all within their household? What if you have a single parent household and they never see their mommy kiss a guy, or they never see their daddy with a girl, but they have seen a gay couple on TV? You see what I'm saying? So that's where my mind kind of goes, and I'm just like, I just don't think it needs to be there for an audience that young. But that's just my take on it.
Here, let me kind of extend the conversation a little bit. So when I say that, it doesn't matter if, I want it or don't want it or not, inevitably it's going to be there.
Yeah.
Whatever producers, whatever people that have more money than I do, or potentially are going to be making more money than I would ever have within my life, they're going to make those decisions, and they're going to put those representations there. Now, what I can do within my own household in reference to certain beliefs I do have, but in addition to being able to use my intellect to give a balance of how certain images should be seen, or how certain images can be seen, that's what I'm willing to do. That's what I'm willing to do. In addition to also, and I'll put this perspective on it. I know, Kyra, seem like you got something to say. In addition to also certain historical context of why certain images could potentially be shown in the scope of propaganda. Where, there's a lot of images to be able to see out here. We, within our own bias, within our own emotions, will believe, well, this image is good and this image is bad. And of course, that's for all human beings. But what problem I have, and I've even talked to ones within LGBT community about this, there are two big problems that I have with the community, because of course, LGBT all day, every day will talk about the particular issues that they have with heterosexual people, Now, two particular big things that I have an issue with is when you're trying to bully someone into a certain belief that you have that the other person doesn't, in addition to one particular letter when it comes down to the T, and sports. Okay?
It's not enough time on this podcast to talk about that.
I'm just saying.
It's not because I have a very strong feeling about that. Because I have 3 girls, and I will fight if that becomes an issue. I don't understand how, when, and where you think that's okay, but okay. But I will fight for my children.
But here's the thing.
Fought.
Go ahead. Go ahead. Go.
See, that's why.
But we fought as women to be able to play certain sports and to have certain accommodations made for us to be in certain activities. And so when you, for example, when the what was they, mixed martial art boxer or whatever had a fight with an actual biologically born woman and it went horribly wrong, that should have never happened. Should have never happened.
Now, while I agree, I'm a full woman. I agree wholeheartedly. But I'm a Libra, so my other side is about to show its face. While I agree, women did fight for a lot of opportunities that they weren't given initially, and now they are given. Women fought to be equal, right? So you could right. But what I'm saying is that they. How can I put this?
No, I understand what you're saying.
Because that's what some people can argue. I'm not saying that I believe in that. No, I don't believe. Let me make it very clear. I do not believe that me as a natural biologically woman should be have an opponent in whatever sport that's a transgender woman, right? Is a transgender woman if you are born a male and then
Yeah, yeah,
you
you're right.
transition into a female? Okay, no, I don't think that's fair. Why? Because in my mind, she's still a guy. This is not an equal opportunity for
It's
me.
not.
She is biologically stronger. She is
Yes.
biologically faster. She is biologically. She has a big advantage over what I have. That does not mean that I should not live up to the challenge. That only means that I have that she is biologically won the fight. But if I am also a person that says, look, I demand equal rights. I demand the same thing or the same pay or the same opportunities that men deserve or blah, 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 blah. If I say that, if I fight for that, if I argue that, and if I'm put in that situation, it's kind of like, okay, this is kind of what y'all asked for. I don't understand where the confusion is. You see what I'm saying? That's where some people can argue. I'm not saying I believe that, but I'm saying that's where
Yeah.
I think some people
Right.
are.
I understand that that's where some people can argue, but that's like, okay, that's like me being, I'm trying to think of what,
Not you,
I
but
don't
you
know.
have women out here that are really. For example, I had my boyfriend has a friend. Okay, his friend is a lesbian. Okay, she is the male counterpart of whatever you I don't know, but she plays the male role. Okay, she's
I like to call it on the androgynous side of the game. You know,
okay, but that's exactly what
that's
she
exactly
is.
what it is.
She's
Okay,
very much
yeah,
so.
yeah, yeah. There you go.
Okay,
There you go.
this girl is tall and big, and she's not a guy. Of course, she's a
Oh,
woman.
yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
but she believes wholeheartedly that she can do any job that a man can do. Okay, she works construction. She lifts the same type of weight that her co-workers do. She does the same thing that her men co-workers do,
Hmm.
and she actually enjoys doing it.
Hmm.
She's trained her body to do it, whatever that means, right? And that's just what she does. That and I don't know what she's getting paid, but let's just say that maybe I have no idea. But what I'm saying is that she is doing the same thing that her male counterparts are doing, and she's a woman. That's her thing, right? I'm not saying that all women should be out here lifting bricks and painting houses and things like that, because it doesn't just go in the blue collar world either. It's out here in corporate America. It's out here in retail. It's out here in supply and chain. It's out here everywhere. Like women are fighting to be equal,
Yeah.
and it's very hard. Let me tell you. Just go ahead because I
Let
can't
me
get through.
let
I
me let
just
me let me kind
you
of
know what
chime
I'm
in.
trying to say here. I
Yeah, yeah,
just
yeah. Let me kind of chime in. So one of the big things that, um, especially when it comes down to exposure at a young age of certain things that you're gonna have parents that are gonna be like, well, I don't want my kids to be exposed to that in my home, or I don't want my kids to be exposed to that yet, you know, or they'll become exposed to it, when they, let's just say, start going to school, or maybe they end up growing up in a town where, there wasn't a lot of representation like that, or they didn't see it as often, but then all of a sudden, after they graduate high school, they go to college, right? They end up going to college. Now, all of a sudden, oh, well, now they see a lot of the letters around them and they don't know how to react to it. You know what I'm saying? They don't have an
yeah.
understanding of, being able to, and I'll put it in this perspective. I'm always going to see you as a human being, you know, until you try to take away the particular traits that I have as a human being to do what I know I need to do for myself. What I know I need to do for myself is not going to impede what you're going to do for yourself. But do not try to force people who don't want to understand you, and don't try to use, getting back to the aspect of entertainment, don't try to use the entertainment industry or try to use certain levels of power to force people to believe what you have understood for yourself for whatever particular period of time. What's up?
So, I think that it's not all of them trying to force it. I also think it's
absolutely
just
I agree.
The industry's wanting to make money also. They want to capitalize on a group and make them feel included so they can also get those dollars too.
Exactly.
Because there was a lot of pressure when Frozen 2 was coming out for from the community for them to make Elsa the first true member of the community that was a Disney star. Yeah. And Disney did not budge and did not fold on that particular character being what people wanted her to be.
Right.
They basically said, we gave you LeFou, deal with that. That's what you're getting right now.
Yeah.
So companies want to include so they can get that money from that particular group. But they don't want to overdo it to run, especially Disney. They don't want to run away those conservative moms that think Disney is the bee's knees, and is everything. So they're trying to find a balance, but they don't want to lose that dollar either.
Yeah, they're definitely trying to find a balance. They're trying to get the coin, as much coin as they possibly can to delve into various markets and being able to have as many consumers from those markets as much as possible. Now, the biggest thing is, what you got, Nat?
No, go ahead. No, go ahead.
The biggest thing is when you're delving into a market, right? Are you now going to have the right representation that is across the board agreed upon as far as that particular community, let alone a specific letter or a specific equation symbol? Are you going to understand the nuances in those specific letters and equation symbols to understand, yeah, you put that representation out there, but not everyone within a specific letter agrees with that representation? What y'all got?
So, I understand what
you're confusing for grown people. It's
they are
confusing for a child. I'm not being facetious.
Yeah.
I sat here and I said, what is LGBTQIA? I think, and then I said what I believe each letter to stand for. But here's the thing: even if you know what all those letters stand for, each one of those letters, I think of it like I shouldn't say. Never mind, I'm not saying that. But I think of it like you should also know what each one of those letters mean, right?
Yeah.
And what they really are, because let me just,
I would even put it in this perspective. Of course, if a particular producer, of a product, whatever the product is, whatever, whatever medium that they, place it out there, when it comes down to, mass populace. If, particular producer puts a product out there, right? Now, them putting it out there, they, of course, I would think the smartest thing they would do is make sure that they have someone who either is a part of that community or really understands that community, a part of their team, to make sure that the representation that is being put out there is the correct one, or the one that a majority within that letter will relate to and understand. I would think that would happen. However, how often do we know that is what's actually happening?
So, So, for example, I'm going to only go off of what I've seen and know, and especially with my kids. So, Nickelodeon, apparently, again, The Loud Show, has found some perfect mixture of being able to present these topics well, because you don't hear about them on Facebook. They don't get blown up online. Like, nobody has a problem with what they're doing because they just introduced, I want to say last year, the sibling coming out as being a lesbian. But when the show came out, there was two dads. Lincoln's best friend Clyde has two dads. So when it came straight out the box, they started it out with the best friend having two dads. He was adopted. So they was like, bam, here you go. We starting with this. All right. So they waited, I want to say 2-3 years before they even brought out another level of it to kids, which was the sister coming out. Mm-hmm. So they found some happy medium somewhere. I mean, I don't know how they figured it out or who's on their staff, but they found a way to present it that did not raise red flags. There were no huge parent protests. You literally heard nothing about it whatsoever. It was radio silence.
I just don't.
Just go.
I am in complete disagree. Here's my beef, right? Okay. My beef is not with LGBTQIA representation. It's really not.
Okay.
I have supported the community. I have friends that are part of the community.
Me too.
I don't care if they represent all day. Okay. Right. But when it comes to kids, it is a very sensitive situation. If you make it, if the representation is overwhelming, or if you're over representing, I feel like you could really have some serious effects within your child in terms of what normal is. What is normal? And if you're normalizing that, and that's what they see, it's kind of like, then you got parents that have to go back and say, wait, I understand this is what you see. I understand this is what you kind of see what's happening, but you have to really then, go back and teach them what you believe normal to be and what you don't believe it to be. And that's where I think the challenge can really come in at. That's my beef. It's just like,
so perfect example. We just had a whole thing happen, like, I want to say Christmas Day. So my daughter got a doll or a toy. She got something. I forget what it was.
Is it toys, music, film, TV?
No, but it's not that. So she got a doll, and my mother was talking to her about the doll. And my mother said, oh, it's a little girl. She was like, how do you know it's a little girl? How do you know it's not a little boy? And because of where my husband is from, he stopped dead in his tracks and was like, hold on. A girl is a girl and a boy is a boy. I don't know what they teach you at school, but this is what it is. You got any questions, you can ask me and your mom.
So,
but why did it confuse her? Like, how did the doll look? Like, I don't understand. Like, what could
the doll was in pink? She has pink hair. It was one of the Shopkin candy dolls, and you could clearly see that it's supposed to be a girl. But at their school, they have these special classes that teaches everybody to get along. They started these special classes to teach everybody, like the anti-bullying classes. It's called, I forget what it's called, but she's been at 2 schools now in 2 different districts where they have these get along classes, and I do believe that they're teaching slightly, somewhat about transgender people and how you're supposed to just get along with people, and it's confusing. She's 7. It's confusing.
That's what I'm saying. It is very confusing.
The big thing that I believe is,
I didn't know they had those classes.
I mean, well, yeah, because I mean, even I think it was like about a year ago.
I had no idea
they were pushing. They were not. As a matter of fact, it's been quite a few years ago. They were pushing the narrative of having certain classes when it comes down to the understanding of inclusion.
Inclusion classes.
And being
right, but they have to tell you about different people.
Where they tell
inclusion.
They tell about different people,
that's what you're talking about.
But also, one of the biggest things that we also have to understand is not only did they talk about inclusion classes, but they also at the same time were talking about critical race theory, CRT, where a part of CRT was a aspect of inclusion when it comes down to one's a part of the community that also are part of a specific race. So there has been the initiative, but they how they label the classes, they may be calling it, inclusion classes, but what all do they talk about within the classes? And you don't find that out until later, until you have one of your children ask a specific question that now is making you think, well, either, let's just say, either did we teach her well, or is she really that confused because of more training she's getting that probably kind of contradicts the training that I've given her as the parent. You know,
right,
you know what I'm saying? So
no, and I understand what you're saying, but I've been teaching my daughter, yes, you don't treat anybody different because they're different, regardless of if they have a mom and a dad at home or whatever they have in their home. You're not better than anyone else. So that I haven't given specifics. She's not ready for specifics yet.
Right.
So it was just you treat people how you want to be treated, regardless of what's going on with them, how they look, whatever. As long as they're not being mean to you, you treat people kindly. And so we had got into the specific details of different homes and all of that. The only thing we've got in the detail is about some kids don't have a mom and a dad now. So that's as far as we've gotten. But the fact that they're going beyond that, when it's not even time for you to go beyond that yet.
I think, and I would even, let me play devil's advocate a little bit. So if the world is trying to push a narrative of now being the time, how are parents and guardians giving the proper education to the next generation to understand being within a certain mindset, with now being in a world that's trying to push you to be within that time of another belief that contradicts the belief you've already been taught?
They're not ready for that. Like, they're not ready for that conversation. They're not ready for that new belief. They're not ready for the push. And whether they're ready or not, honestly, the push is already happening. The push was happening. I remember in high school, actually, we went to School of the Arts. So if you ever went to like an artsy, school or to
inevitably is going to be
an artsy group.
Yeah.
One thing I can remember is that there was a conversation had against, we had like these bathrooms, right? The first time I had ever seen a bathroom where it was like both genders could use the same restroom was in high school.
Yeah.
And I didn't really understand. I mean, I understood what it was, but I never really went in there until like, I think one day. And then and that's just kind of what it was. It was just a bathroom. But the choir was so comfortable with like changing in front of each other. It was rare times where we had all the girls in the girls' room, all the boys in the boys' room. From what I can remember, most of us just kind of, hey, I'm about to change into my dress or change into my suit.
Foundationally, we understood the level of respect.
Right.
When it came down to not, being fresh, like, one of the males not being fresh in front of the females, or the females.
And I think it was like a level of, I don't think it was thought. I mean, and I could be wrong, but I could, even me, like, and I don't change in front of nobody. I have changed a few times, and I never thought once, oh, let me look at him or let me check him out. No, I'm more focused on what I'm doing, and he's more focused on what he's doing.
Right. And
we could be carrying a whole conversation, but not ever thinking about what each other look like or what she has or what he had. But that was also a part in school, amongst a group of students that spent a lot of time together. So we
spent a lot of time together, but then also we were groomed by teachers that reinforce certain levels of respect and certain levels of understanding of what environment you are in right now. So it's unnecessary to do that sucker shit that often will happen in our neighborhood high schools.
Right.
And also we were groomed by teachers that reinforce certain levels of respect and certain levels of understanding of what environment you are in right now. So it's unnecessary to do that sucker shit that often will happen in our neighborhood high schools.
Right. I will also say that we were groomed by teachers, some teachers that were of that community.
Right.
He's an ass.
Like you, hey.
But nobody was really, I mean, like you, and then people like all different sizes. So there was like, high school was a place where there was, I can honestly say was a, at least for me, was a comfortable, safe zone. Physically, mentally, it was just a safe zone for me. A lot of people I went to school with probably don't feel that way. But how I feel is that's how in my state of mind there, in my situation there, it was comfortable. I was plus size. I didn't even care if somebody looked at me and said, "Oh, she's fat." It was really no body shaming. Like I didn't feel nobody ever body shamed me.
I would just like to say you was blessed because high school was a hellhole.
We know, like for myself and Nat, we know we had certain privileges going to the specific school that we went to. You know what I'm saying? Because it wasn't all that, body shaming, talking about, TNA, you know what I'm saying, ragging on, kielbasa and tilapias. It wasn't really none of that. It was like, okay, at the youngest, I'll say youngest, grade, at 9th grade, we were groomed in understanding, being in the arts, let alone being respectful when all of y'all need to act like adults. It was the start of that. And then for us, it's like, some, that we know went to neighborhood high schools and everything, and we would talk to them, and then they realized talking to us, oh, we're a little bit more mature. It happened to me. In being real about it, if you're from DC, you know what Anacostia is. You know what I'm saying? If you're from DC, you know what Anacostia is, especially with how I grew up, being in Anacostia, I realized my level of maturity is a little bit higher than most of the other guys that I'm in the neighborhood with. You know what I'm saying? Like I would think about certain things that they didn't even have a thought of. But then it went back to my grooming that I got at a younger age and younger grade because of the teachers I was around.
And that's the positive side of having a good balance of, like people from different walks of life to kind of groom you. I don't believe that you just need heterosexual teachers. I don't believe that you just need black teachers or white teachers. I really think that you need a little bit of everybody to kind of come in and.
Now, with saying that, having that, inclusion, being very inclusive, you also have to have ones that are mature within their own subset, within their own understanding of how they, live, what they do, so on and so forth. But oftentimes, I'm gonna say it. Oftentimes, it's kind of this thing where you don't want an adult to end up taking advantage of your children. You don't want that to happen.
And I can't say that never happened in high school to somebody else. I can only speak for myself that never happened.
Right. I mean, I'm gonna be real about it. It did happen in our high school, and I could give various examples. I'm not gonna give the examples, but I can definitely give various examples of it. Yeah. Nevertheless, it both can happen on either side, within the community or not within the community.
Absolutely.
Now, the biggest thing is how often, things in modern society, what is talked about is often it not happening in that community, but then at the same time, certain things being, excluded out of the conversation in what happens within that community. Because now becomes an argument of, okay, like to give an example, we're talking about this particular topic as far as something in a community that none of us are in. But you have ones out there that would say, oh, well, they ain't supposed to be talking about stuff like this because they're not part of the community. We need to have representation.
They talk about our community all the time.
True, but the aspect of being afraid to talk about stuff when you're not a part of the community that may affect you because it is happening in the world now. There is representation out there. There are examples out there, now within either community or not, are there always good representations? Hell no. I would even say, on my side, there are not a lot of good representations, but you have to look for the good representation. You have to look for it. Even though there's also a narrative out there being pushed as far as saying, well, and I'm gonna say it. When it comes down to, straight males, acting a certain way, and inevitably they're just gonna always be that way because that's just them. Where I'm like, whoever says that is a dummy. You know what I'm saying? Because it's not that representation alone, which is a negative representation, being all of what one particular group. I think most people understand that's bullshit. But then also in turn, on the flip side of that, how often do we have a mindset of understanding ones that are within that community that also still acknowledge the other side as far as their own existence and their own living? Because there are ones within that community also that have that understanding. It's just, you have, in my personal opinion, the media is trying to get the most money out of consumers. So they're going to push a narrative that is more so built within the scope of what is more controversial. What are people going to latch on to? What are people going to now delve into when it comes down to immediately latching on to the negative? Where be talking about the aspect of ones who are trying to push, representation within, television shows, entertainment, cartoons, whatever. Being able to put out that representation, but not trying to reinforce certain negatives, let alone certain stereotypes. When you do that, you see what I'm
I
saying?
totally get that. And I think that it would be a lot easier if, I don't know. I keep thinking about the kids because
I think about the kids. I mean,
kids don't know all that stuff. But they really don't know. All they know is what they see. If they see a little boy come into a classroom with a wig on and maybe a pair of little, girl shoes and a dress, how do they internalize that?
But it goes back to first.
Because I had that same issue with my niece at one point. We were watching something.
Mm-hmm.
I was watching RuPaul's drag show.
Okay.
That's what I was watching.
Okay. Yeah.
And I heard my niece say that they look good. They always look good on the show. But I heard my niece say, "Oh, she's pretty," and I said, "Oh, really?" She said, "Yeah." Now this is a grown man dressed up in drag. At this time, my niece was like, I don't know, I think she was around 7 or 8, something like that. Maybe like 7 or 8. She immediately took what she saw. Again, children process things initially how they see it. How I see it is how I think it is, right? It's no reason for them to really look past anything, right? So she's like, "Oh, she's pretty." I said, "Oh, she is," and I said, "Yeah." She said, "Yeah," and I said, "Well, what about her looks pretty?" I never ever, said anything to make her think that she was not a woman. I just asked her some questions, and she kept answering them, and then she went back to the TV, and she was like,
Here.
She looks a little different. That's what she said. She said she looks different.
Right.
And I said, "Oh, okay." And that's kind of how we left it. I never explained to her what drag was. I never did any of that. But she saw her as a woman, but she also saw that there was something a little off, right? Or something that looked different.
Okay.
But she didn't know what it was at that time.
Right.
That's why it's confusing, because now parents have to go back and say, "Well." And here's my other beef with it. If I'm a parent and my kid comes to me and says, "I saw something on TV, it looks like a girl, I think it's a girl, but can you look at it too and let me know if it's something else?" And I look at it and I instantly know that it's a drag or it's not a girl, right? If I explain to my kid what it really is, what's really going on, it could either do one or two things. He could either understand what I'm saying, take it and just leave it alone and accept it for what it is, or that opens up a whole new door of curiosity. Well, now that I know what this is, right? Because knowledge is power.
Yeah.
Now that I know what this is, why don't I kind of explore this a little bit more?
Oftentimes,
Okay.
we have to
So,
give the kids a little bit more context on how to see something, because if we just leave them to the
yeah,
wayside and them just only interpret based on what little knowledge that they have of what is going on in the world, then inevitably they're going to more so delve into certain narratives that probably in most cases we never thought would even come from our children, because our children were around us, getting a certain understanding of certain things, being around us, being the parents, being the guardians, being the uncle, the auntie, family members, what may have you. But then also in turn, another thing that we have to make sure that we think about, and we're almost up on time. Another thing that we have to make sure that we think about is being able to understand how to have a conversation about different things that we do not delve into ourselves. Being able to be
and
open enough to have that conversation, right? And if we don't learn how to do that, we don't have a baseline of being able to understand certain things without us not delving into those things ourselves, then we put our kids at a disadvantage because we're not giving them more intellectual, understanding of being able to use their mind more critically. You know, we're not.
it's true.
So, but would you got Nat? We got a minute left.
No, I'm sorry. I was just gonna say real quick that I could say a whole bunch about this because it's a whole like religious aspect of it that I'm against. But that's just me. Where parents just kind of go into the whole thing of, look, if you do this, then you'll go here, blah 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 blah. I just don't understand why that happens, but whatever. What I will say is that I think that, and I don't have kids, so Kara can probably chime in on this. But what I'm saying is that I just think that if I did have kids, I feel like I see it from two different ends. If I was a lesbian woman and I had a wife or a girlfriend and we were raising a child, it could also go that way where the child sees us where she has two mommies. That is her normal. That's
Yeah.
what she sees every day. That's what she knows. Okay. I don't think that that means that child is going to grow up to like women or the same sex. I just think that that's her normal or that's his normal.
Oftentimes, and let's be real about this, oftentimes what becomes someone's normal oftentimes will become their lived narrative. You know, what they
No, I
see,
know.
but then also negative reinforcement in seeing certain things can also promote a certain narrative.
But
You know,
then you have that era of, oh, I was born this way. Do y'all remember that whole
a lot of
era when people were like,
a
I
lot of
was born
people
this
a
way?
lot of people say
I
that.
was born. I'm like, I don't know if you were born.
A lot of people say
That's just
that.
me.
Like,
I don't know. I
let's
mean,
be
but I
let's
don't
be
know.
let's be real about it. And um, a lot of people say that as a means to reinforce what they already know for themselves. You know, now they can say that if they were born that way, they believe that they're that way, so on and so
Yeah.
forth. Okay, that's fair. But I also understand, heterosexual attraction is something that everyone is groomed into. And it's more of the dominant within this world. Let's be real about it. Because the most natural way to be able to have a child is through heterosexual sex. Let's be real about it. You know, not
And
not
that's where a lot of it is, yeah, and that's where some of the other stuff is coming into play because they cannot reproduce if you have two of the same sex. Two women can't produce a child, two men can't produce a child. So you have to bring a heterosexual
other means
component in there somewhere.
in the equation. Other means such as being able to get a surrogate, being able to
Yeah.
gain sperm that has been frivolously given for money, being able to get eggs. You know what I'm saying? I did say frivolously given. Yes, I did. nevertheless, we pretty much up on time. Kyra, you got anything to say before we go?
No, we pretty much talked about a lot today.
Yeah, we did.
All right.
Hey, this Real Raw Exchange podcast. I'm Frank, and y'all take it easy. Have a wonderful week. Bye-bye.
Bye.